The new administrator of the Social Security Administration, the former governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley, has instituted his STAT performance management system at SSA. He called it City Stat when he was mayor of Baltimore and State Stat when he was governor. Adam Goldstein is associate commissioner and senior procurement executive at SSA. He says the procurement team at his agency is providing support for all of Administrator O'Malley's STAT priorities.
One example is we recently awarded 54 contracts with each state and several U.S. territories for electronic death records, and that's part of the agency's priority to reduce overpayments and underpayments. As another example, just this last year, we awarded a new streamlined contract for physician services to evaluate medical evidence when members of the public apply for disability insurance, and that contract will help reduce the disability processing time, which is another one of the agency's major priorities at the moment.
Mm-hmm. How do you go about aligning those priorities as they change over time? Like, for example, the things that you just talked about, I imagine there'll come a time where you go, okay, we have the brain power that we need to do that, we have the contracts in place, and now a new priority will rise to the top.
Sure. So, acquisition planning is key, and the moment that we find out that there is a new priority coming or a change in the agency's priorities, the first thing that we would do is assess our existing agency contracts, and if there's not something in place, we'll work hand in hand with our customer activities to conduct market research and find the best acquisition vehicles. And, ideally, those will be small business vehicles, and we can talk about that in a moment too. But it's pretty much just comes down to acquisition planning, and our staff is extremely flexible and resilient. And one of the best things about working at SSA is having truly having an impact on every member of the American public.
Yeah, you mentioned small business goals, and that's something that every agency obviously tracks, and the Small Business Administration at OMB are looking at those on an ongoing basis. What does that look like at SSA?
Sure, great question. So every year, the Small Business Administration gives agencies a small business scorecard. Our FY23 scorecard grade was A. So in 2023, we awarded 34% of our prime contracting dollars to small business concerns, and that was up from 27% just 2 years ago. Our contracting staff work hand in hand with program and requiring offices early and often to make sure that we can identify small business vehicles and make sure that we're meeting or exceeding the government-wide goals.
What did you do to drive that increase, and what do you think you need to do to continue to maintain those levels?
Sure. So the bulk of that increase came from our information technology spending, and there were a couple of big programs over the past few years that I've worked hand in hand with our CIO's office to try and move work from large business to small business vehicles. One was contracts for various types of information technology support services. And then also one of our large IT hardware contracts, we were able to move actually to a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So those types of actions have a really big impact, not only the year that we issue them, but those happen to both be types of contracts where we can place orders for several years, so they'll pay socioeconomic dividends for years to come.
How do you evaluate the different categories of contracts or the different services and goods that you're contracting for to determine what makes for a good move from a standard contract to a small business set-aside type?
So we work hand in hand with our customer activities to conduct market research, and in the IT arena especially, there is a lot of government-wide ordering vehicles that are available through General Services Administration. Even NASA actually has an IT contract that other agencies can use. And we'll often start by looking at those vehicles to see what's out there. We'll post requests for information, which is essentially a draft solicitation, and industry can give us feedback and give us a sense of what capabilities are out there. So through that type of market research, we can get a pretty good sense of what capabilities are out there and whether or not a move for small business makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because a friend of mine who was in government is on the industry side now, said to me at this conference, there's a GWAC for everything. So it sounds like if you want it, it's probably available through one of those vehicles you just mentioned.
There sure is. And another benefit of using those vehicles is the Office of Management and Budget has category management goals with each agency as well, where, in an ideal world, we're supposed to, have a certain percent of our spend under existing vehicles just because they are more efficient and they tend to have better pricing. So when we use these small business vehicles, we're not only getting the socioeconomic credit, but we're also helping with the government-wide goals on category management and spend under management.
Adam Goldstein of SSA.